What if I told you Chevrolet built over 35 wild, futuristic, and downright stunning cars, then never released them? From turbine trucks to rotary-powered Corvettes, these forgotten machines could have changed everything. Buckle up as I uncover 35 rare Chevys that were built but never allowed to hit the streets. Number 35. 1967 Chevrolet Astro 1. In the vibrant era of the late 1960s, General Motors was riding high on a wave of futuristic ambition. Amidst this culture of experimentation emerged a breathtaking vision from Chevrolet, the Astro 1. Designed under the creative eye of Roy Lawnberger, this concept car wasn't just a stylistic exercise, it was a bold look at what a mid-engine Corvette might one day become. But unlike typical dream cars of the era, the Astro 1 carried with it a serious aerodynamic agenda. Its impossibly low stance, under 35 inches tall, gave it the profile of a spacecraft rather than a sports car. The cockpit was accessed not through conventional doors, but via a hinged canopy that lifted the entire roof and windshield. It had fixed seats and a movable steering wheel and instrument panel to make ingress and egress possible, years ahead of its time. Power came from a modest flat-six engine mounted low behind the seats, enabling the low profile while enhancing balance and handling. The nose borrowed heavily from the Mako Shark show cars, tapering into a pointed beak with pop-up headlights embedded in the fenders. The design was radically aerodynamic, with wheel skirts and a flush surface that made the Astro 1 look like it could pierce through the atmosphere itself. Yet, for all its innovation, the Astro 1 was never meant for production. It was Chevrolet dreaming out loud, pushing design, ergonomics, and engineering to their edges. The car never made it past the show floor, but it left behind a legacy of design cues and ambition that would echo through future Corvette experiments. The Astro 1 stands as a reminder that sometimes the rarest Chevys are the ones the world never got to buy. Number 34. 1968 Chevrolet Astro 2. Following the radical design of the Astro 1, Chevrolet returned just 1 year later with something far more grounded in performance possibility, the Astro 2. Officially dubbed XP880, this concept was not just an exercise in styling, but a serious engineering proposal for a mid-engine Corvette that could be built using off-the-shelf parts. Unlike the ultra-low, canopy-access Astro 1, the Astro 2 featured conventional doors and proportions that hinted at real-world feasibility. This wasn't a spaceship anymore, it was a Corvette from an alternate timeline. At its heart sat a 427 cubic inch big block V, positioned behind the seats in a rear mid layout. The engine was borrowed from the production Corvette, while the transaxle came from a Pontiac Tempest, an example of GM parts bin creativity at its most daring. With a sleek fastback design, aggressive rear buttresses, and a flowing greenhouse, the Astro 2 was part Italian exotic, part American muscle. It rode on a specially constructed frame designed to optimize weight distribution, showcasing GM's serious interest in advancing Corvette performance to rival European rivals. Unlike many show cars of the era, the Astro 2 was fully drivable and underwent performance testing. It proved that a mid-engine layout wasn't just theoretical, it worked, and it worked well. But as the 1970s loomed, internal hesitation and looming emissions regulations shelved the mid-engine Corvette dream. The Astro 2 was quietly tucked away, never progressing past the prototype phase. Yet its influence lingered. It provided engineers and designers with hard data, and fans with a glimpse of what could have been. Decades later, with the arrival of the Kate Corvette, the Astro 2's vision was finally realized. But in the late 60s, this was just a whisper of what was to come. A rare and quietly heroic machine, the Astro 2 was Chevrolet daring to engineer a different destiny. Number 33. 1968 Chevrolet Astrovet. In the same whirlwind year that birthed the Astro 2, Chevrolet unveiled yet another experimental Corvette that pushed boundaries in silence, the Astrovet. Officially known as XP764 and sometimes confused with earlier Astro projects, this car was not about flashy gimmicks or public theatrics. It was an internal aerodynamic study, a rolling laboratory cloaked in fiberglass and forward-thinking design. The Astrovet wasn't chasing headlines, it was chasing airflow. Developed under the direction of Bill Mitchell and the GM styling department, the Astrovet featured a sharply pointed nose, extended front overhang, and rear wheel skirts to reduce drag. The covered headlamps and smooth, uninterrupted surface lines were more about function than flash. This was the car that tested what would later define the aerodynamic DNA of future Corvettes. Mounted on a C3 chassis, it bore a long, tapered tail and a nearly seamless body that whispered its way through wind tunnel testing. Inside, the cabin was minimalist, with a driver-focused layout designed to simulate a future high-speed cruiser. No production plans were ever pinned, nor was it meant for Motorama crowds or magazine centerfolds. The Astrovet's primary role was to serve GM's research ambitions as a quiet prototype in a time when horsepower and showmanship stole the spotlight. Still, the car left its mark. Elements from its aerodynamic testing would resurface in the C3's refined evolutions, and even in the mid-engine experiments that came decades later. Though the Astrovet never saw the showroom floor, its ghost lived on in the silent shaping of Chevrolet's future. Rare, obscure, and utterly purposeful, the Astrovet was a Corvette not built to be driven by the public, but to shape what they would one day drive. Number 32. 1976 Chevrolet Arovet. The Chevrolet Arovet stands as one of the most serious attempts GM ever made at building a true mid-engine Corvette. Born from years of experimentation and internal tug-of-war, it represented the pinnacle of General Motors' advanced engineering during the mid-1970s. What began as XP882 in the late 1960s was reborn and reimagined in 1976 as the Arovet, now sporting a radical wedge shape, gull-wing doors, and a mid-mounted V8 engine. Unlike many pie-in-the-sky show cars, the Arovet was fully functional and drivable. Its sleek body was built from aluminum, reducing weight while enhancing performance, and its profile cut through the air like a scalpel. Underneath, it used a mid-mounted 400 cubic inch V mated to a transaxle developed with help from Oldsmobile's Toronado platform. The result was a balanced, exotic sports car that could have easily gone toe-to-toe with Europe's finest. Even more captivating were the details. The gull-wing doors were a nod to the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, but uniquely integrated into the car's wedge-shaped canopy. The dash was clean, almost minimalistic, with the kind of forward-thinking ergonomics that wouldn't become common for decades. It was a visual and mechanical revolution under the Chevrolet badge. There was genuine momentum behind this car. Bill Mitchell and Zora Arkas-Duntov, two of the most powerful voices in GM's design and engineering departments, backed the Arovet. In fact, it got so far in development that it was briefly approved for production as the next-generation Corvette. But when corporate leadership shifted and fuel economy and cost-saving initiatives took over, the dream was scrapped. The Arovet never made it to the streets, but it came closer than any mid-engine concept before it. It was the Corvette that could have changed the game decades earlier. Rare, real, and heartbreakingly unrealized, the Arovet was a future that Chevrolet held in its hands but let slip through its fingers. Number 31. 1957 Chevrolet Corvette Supersport. In the golden era of chrome and optimism, when America's highways stretched endlessly toward the future, Chevrolet unveiled a dazzling machine that was never meant for the average driver, the Corvette Supersport. First revealed at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York during the 1956 Motorama, this one-off experimental car was Chevrolet's first real attempt to transform the Corvette from a stylish roadster into a fire-breathing performance icon. Unlike the standard cone Corvette of the time, the Super Sport didn't hide its ambitions. Beneath its fiberglass skin sat a fuel-injected 283 cubic inch V8, tuned to deliver well over 280 horsepower, a staggering figure in the mid-1950s. This made it one of the most powerful Corvettes ever built up to that point, even if the public would never get their hands on it. What set the Super Sport apart wasn't just what was under the hood, but how it looked. The car featured unique anodized aluminum panels along the sides, a metallic blue interior, custom gauges, and a mesh grille that gave it a brutal, race-ready face. It was equipped with competition-style bucket seats and a revised dashboard layout that hinted at motorsport intent. Though it toured auto shows and dazzled onlookers, the Super Sport was destined to remain a one-off. It disappeared from the spotlight as quickly as it arrived, later returning to GM's private collection and rarely seen since. Chevrolet would go on to introduce performance upgrades in production Corvettes, but the raw edge of the Super Sport never made it past the prototype stage. This rare machine remains a whisper of what could have been, a Corvette born not for cruising, but for conquering. And like many of GM's boldest ideas, it came too early, too fast, and ultimately too rare to survive. Number 30. 1954 Chevrolet Nomad Concept. Before it became a beloved nameplate among 50 station wagon enthusiasts, the Chevrolet Nomad started as something far more exclusive, a dream car conceived not for the road, but for the stage. The original 1954 Nomad concept was a Motorama showpiece, designed under the watchful eye of Harley Earl and crafted to blur the lines between a sports car and a family hauler. It was unlike anything Chevrolet had ever built, a Corvette in the front and a station wagon in the back. Based on the Corvette's fiberglass chassis, the Nomad concept retained the sports car's flowing front end but extended the roofline rearward to create a sleek two-door wagon. Chrome detailing ran the length of the body, and a wraparound rear window added a touch of aviation-inspired flair. The interior was equally upscale, with rich upholstery, futuristic gauges, and more room for passengers and cargo than the standard Corvette could ever offer. It wasn't just the design that set the Nomad apart, it was the idea. A high-performance sport wagon was almost unheard of in the early 1950s. And yet, here was Chevrolet daring to fuse utility with style in a single flowing silhouette. The concept wowed crowds at GM's 1954 Motorama, but production never followed. Building a fiberglass-bodied station wagon on a sports car platform proved too complex, too expensive, and too radical for the conservative production budgets of the day. Though a steel-bodied version of the Nomad would eventually enter production on the Belair platform in 1955, the original Corvette-based Nomad remained a tantalizing one-off. It embodied a vision of a future where wagons could be glamorous and daring, not just practical. Rare, influential, and never released, the 1954 Nomad concept was Chevrolet's boldest family car that never made it to the family driveway. Number 29. 1955 Chevrolet Biscane Concept. Long before the Biscane name would find its way onto Chevrolet's lineup of practical full-size sedans, it debuted as a striking concept car at the 1955 General Motors Motorama, a design statement that fused minimalism with futurism. Unlike its production namesake, the original Biscane was a radical one-off designed to explore aerodynamic styling and space-age design cues. It was not meant to be built for the masses, it was meant to reimagine what a Chevrolet could look like in the next decade. The Biscane concept featured a low-slung body with flowing lines and an almost delicate presence, far removed from the boxier shapes of the day. It had no B-pillars, allowing for an uninterrupted open side profile when the doors were open, a dramatic touch that felt futuristic even in the jet-age 1950s. Its panoramic wraparound windshield and rear glass gave the impression of a bubble canopy, offering passengers an unfiltered view of the world around them. Inside, the car was equally ahead of its time, with a floating dashboard, bright two-tone materials, and push-button controls hinting at an atomic age tomorrow. Power came from a 215 cubic inch inline-six engine, but performance wasn't the point. The Biscane was built to inspire. It made its way across the country on the Motorama circuit, leaving crowds in awe with its graceful presence and advanced design. Despite the attention it received, Chevrolet never intended to release it as a production model. The concept was quietly retired, and over time, even the show car itself was disassembled and lost to history. The Biscane concept was a whisper of a Chevrolet future that never came to be. It didn't roar, it glided. A rare exercise in restraint and elegance, it stands as one of the most graceful Chevys that never made it beyond the show floor. Number 28. 2003 Chevrolet Cheyenne. In the early 2000s, as pickup trucks were transforming from utilitarian workhorses into personal lifestyle statements, Chevrolet unveiled the Cheyenne Concept, a bold reimagining of what a full-size truck could be. Debuting at the 2003 North American International Auto Show in Detroit, the Cheyenne wasn't just another show vehicle. It was a rolling blueprint for a luxury pickup that blended power, innovation, and design in a way Chevrolet had never dared before. Under its sculpted hood was a 6-liter Vortec V8, delivering robust performance with over 500 horsepower thanks to an integrated supercharger. But raw power wasn't the only headline. The Cheyenne featured an all-independent suspension system, front and rear, a radical departure from the live rear axles typically found on trucks. This gave it a smoother, more car-like ride that hinted at what pickups could evolve into. Design-wise, the Cheyenne broke boundaries. Its cab featured dual rear-hinge doors that opened wide for easy access to a luxuriously appointed interior with leather seats, brushed aluminum trim, and a floor-mounted shifter, traits more often seen in sports sedans than pickup trucks. The rear bed included modular storage compartments, a slide-out cargo floor, and a power liftgate, all features that wouldn't appear in production trucks for years. Despite widespread praise and real potential, the Cheyenne never reached showroom. It was deemed too expensive to produce, too ahead of its time, and ultimately shelved as the Silverado lineup continued along a more conservative path. Today, the 2003 Cheyenne stands as a lost opportunity, proof that Chevrolet once envisioned trucks not just as tools, but as machines of elegance, engineering, and luxury. Rare and unreleased, it was a glimpse at the pickup revolution before the world was ready for it. Number 27. 1984 Chevrolet Citation IV. In the mid-1980s, General Motors was navigating a changing automotive landscape. Downsizing, fuel efficiency, and front-wheel drive platforms were no longer trends but mandates. Amidst this shift, Chevrolet introduced a sleek and surprisingly futuristic concept called the Citation IV. It bore the name of a much-maligned production car, the original Chevrolet Citation, but the IV was more than just a numeric suffix. It signified reinvention, a clean break from the stigma of its predecessor. The Citation IV concept was low, aerodynamic, and forward-thinking, with a fiberglass body that looked like it had slipped out of a wind tunnel. It featured a sharply tapered nose, flush-mounted glass, and hidden headlights, design cues that wouldn't fully surface in production vehicles until the 1990s. The roofline flowed seamlessly into the rear deck, giving it a silhouette that felt more European Grand Tourer than compact commuter. It was a surprising departure from the boxy, uninspired shapes that defined GM's J-platform vehicles at the time. Inside, the cockpit wrapped around the driver, showcasing digital instrumentation, touch-sensitive controls, and a minimalist layout that looked like it belonged in a sci-fi film. The concept was also rumored to incorporate lightweight composite materials and a more advanced version of GM's front-wheel drive architecture. It was an attempt to position Chevrolet at the forefront of the coming tech-focused automotive era. But as with many of GM's most daring concepts, the Citation IV never made it past the auto show circuit. It was too radical, too costly, and perhaps too burdened by the name of its underwhelming predecessor. The car vanished quietly, but its spirit lived on in the evolution of more refined GM sedans in the years to follow. Rare and visionary, the Citation IV was a concept born not to erase history, but to rewrite it, if only for a moment. Number 26. 1960 Chevrolet Serve 1. In an era when American automakers were fixated on chrome and tail fins, Chevrolet quietly built a machine that looked more at home on a Formula One grid than a city boulevard. The Chevrolet Serve 1, short for Corvette Engineering Research Vehicle, wasn't a styling exercise or a Motorama showpiece. It was a raw, purpose-built prototype created under the watchful eye of Zora Arkus Duntov, the godfather of the Corvette. And it was designed with only one goal in mind: speed through science. Built in 1960, the Serve I looked like nothing else Chevrolet had ever produced. With a tubular steel space frame, aluminum bodywork, and open wheels, it resembled a single-seater race car more than any showroom product. At its core was a fuel-injected 283 cubic inch Vate-mounted midship, producing around 350 horsepower in a chassis that weighed less than 1,600 pounds. The result was staggering performance potential for the time, and its real-world purpose was to test suspension geometry, weight distribution, and drivetrain layouts for future Corvette models. The Serve I featured fully independent suspension, experimental steering designs, and even wind tunnel validated bodywork, technologies that wouldn't become common in production cars for decades. It underwent rigorous testing on GM's proving grounds, often in the hands of Duntov himself, and helped Chevrolet gather crucial performance data. Yet despite its capabilities, the Serve I was never intended for production or even public display. It was a secret weapon in Chevrolet's performance arsenal, a laboratory on wheels hidden behind closed doors. Today, the Serve 1 is considered a foundational moment in Chevrolet's engineering history. It was rare not just because it was never released, but because it was never meant to be seen. A ghost of speed and science, it paved the way for Corvettes yet to come, all while remaining locked behind the gates of GM's Skunk Works. Number 25. 1964 Chevrolet Serve 2. If the original Serve was Chevrolet's secret science project, then the Serve 2 was its classified moonshot. Conceived in 1964 under Zora Arkus Duntov, the Chevrolet Engineering Research Vehicle 2 wasn't just an experimental platform. It was a direct response to Ford's ambitious GT40 and the growing dominance of European endurance racers. The Serve 2 represented GM's closest brush with building a true American supercar in the golden age of motorsports. Its chassis was a marvel of design, a monocoque structure made of lightweight materials with an advanced all-wheel drive system that sent power to both front and rear axles independently. At its heart was a mid-mounted, all-aluminum 377 cubic inch small block V fed by Hill-borne fuel injection, producing nearly 500 horsepower. That power was distributed through a two-speed automatic transaxle system derived from GM's engineering for the Oldsmobile Toronado. The result was mind-bending acceleration, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, a figure that bordered on science fiction in the mid-1960s. The bodywork was razor-sharp, with a wedge profile and ultra-low stance that gave it the appearance of a Le Mans prototype. Twin fuel tanks were housed in the side sills, while massive brakes and coilover suspension kept the car planted at high speeds. But despite its performance and cutting-edge design, the Serve 2 was doomed by GM's internal ban on factory-backed racing program. The project was shelved just as it began to show real potential on the test track. Only one Serve 2 prototype was ever completed. It never raced, never roared down the Mulsanne Straight, and never landed in showrooms. But it remains one of the rarest and most advanced vehicles Chevrolet ever built, a glimpse into an alternate future where GM went toe-to-toe with Ferrari on the world stage. Number 24. 1986 Chevrolet Corvette Indy. In the mid-1980s, Chevrolet stunned the automotive world with a radical vision of the future, a car that looked more like a spacecraft than anything from Detroit. That car was the Chevrolet Corvette Indy, a jaw-dropping concept first revealed at the 1986 Detroit Auto Show. It wasn't just another design study, it was GM's declaration that the Corvette could evolve into something far beyond the boundaries of tradition. The Corvette Indy was powered by a 2.6 5-liter twin-turbo V8 derived from Chevrolet's actual IndyCar racing engine, delivering a stunning 600 horsepower. Mounted behind the driver in a mid-engine layout, the car featured full-time all-wheel drive, 4-wheel steering, and active suspension, technologies that were far ahead of their time. These systems weren't theoretical, they were functional, developed in collaboration with Lotus Engineering, which GM would later acquire. Its design was equally groundbreaking. With its low-slung stance, wedge-shaped body, and wraparound glass canopy, the Corvette Indy looked like it belonged in a science fiction film. The body was made of carbon fiber and Kevlar, keeping weight down while adding structural rigidity. The interior was filled with digital displays, advanced touch controls, and a fighter jet-inspired layout. Everything about it screamed future because that's exactly what it was built to represent. Despite overwhelming attention and widespread admiration, the Corvette Indy never made it to production. The complexity of its systems and the cost of implementation were simply too high for the market at the time. But the influence of this concept lingered, with many of its design and engineering cues trickling down into future Corvette generations. The Corvette Indy remains one of Chevrolet's most audacious concept vehicles ever created. Rare, wild, and unforgettable, it was a glimpse at what could happen when engineers and designers were told to build without limits. Number 23. 1990 Chevrolet Corvette Navola. In 1990, the iconic Italian design house Bertone collaborated with Chevrolet to craft a bold reinterpretation of America's most beloved sports car. The result was the Corvette Navola, a one-off concept that blended European elegance with raw American muscle. Named after legendary racing driver Tazio Nuvolari, the Navola was not just a styling exercise. It was a philosophical exploration of what a Corvette could become if viewed through the eyes of an Italian coach builder. Built on the chassis of the then-current C4 Corvette ZR1, the Navola retained the car's ferocious 375 horsepower LT5 V8 engine developed in partnership with Lotus. However, everything above the chassis was dramatically altered. The fiberglass body was replaced with Bertone's own sleek steel bodywork, sculpted into a curvaceous, mid-engine silhouette more reminiscent of a Ferrari than a Chevy. The long tail, sweeping glass canopy, and low-slung nose gave the car a distinctly exotic profile, transforming the brute force of the ZR1 into something far more refined. The interior was fully reworked as well, featuring leather, brushed aluminum, and an ergonomic layout that mirrored the style and sophistication of European Grand Tourers. But for all its ambition and craftsmanship, the Navola was never intended for production. It remained a one-of-a-kind prototype, created as a design statement and showpiece, not a retail product. Chevrolet had no plans to move the Corvette to a mid-engine platform at the time, making the Navola more of a dream than a roadmap. Still, the Corvette Navola was significant. It demonstrated how malleable the Corvette's identity could be, how it could shed its Detroit roots and wear a tailored Italian suit without losing its soul. Rare and unreleased, the Navola was a flash of transatlantic magic that existed for just one brief, beautiful moment. Number 22. 1956 Chevrolet Corvette Impala XP101. In the mid-1950s, Chevrolet was caught between two identities, the youthful spirit of the Corvette and the full-size luxury aspirations of its growing passenger car line. The Corvette Impala concept, officially known as XP101, was an ambitious attempt to merge those worlds into a single, radical design. Debuting at the 1956 GM Motorama, this car was a bold experiment that previewed styling themes and conceptual ideas well ahead of their time. While the car carried Corvette styling cues up front with its signature mesh grille, round headlights, and sporty contours, it was unmistakably larger and more refined than the fiberglass roadster America had just begun to embrace. The Corvette Impala had a longer wheelbase and a fixed steel roofline, creating a two-door hardtop coupe with space for 4 passengers. It also featured rear tail fins, chrome accents, and sweeping body lines that hinted at the future direction of Chevrolet design. Inside, the cabin was outfitted with plush materials, unique control panels, and an advanced instrument cluster designed to signal Chevrolet's luxury ambitions. Beneath the skin, it used many components from the Corvette platform, making it a performance-minded cruiser with GT car aspirations. Yet despite its promising configuration, Chevrolet never moved the Corvette Impala into production. The idea of combining Corvette sportiness with Impala elegance proved too niche, too experimental for the marketplace of the late 1950s. Instead, Chevrolet split the identities into 2 separate nameplates, Corvette for speed and Impala for comfort. Today, the XP101 exists as a tantalizing glimpse into what could have been a luxurious grand tour with Corvette blood and Impala bone. Rare, visionary, and utterly unique, the Corvette Impala stands as a forgotten fork in the road where Chevrolet nearly took a very different path. Number 21. 1963 Chevrolet Testudo. In 1963, Chevrolet's experimental spirit crossed the Atlantic and took on an Italian form, resulting in one of the most striking and rarest concept cars the company never released, the Chevrolet Testudo. Designed by the young and soon-to-be legendary Giorgetto Giugiaro at Bertone, the Testudo was built on a heavily modified Chevrolet Corvair chassis and showcased at the Geneva Motor Show. The name Testudo, meaning turtle in Italian, hinted at the car's sleek, domed appearance, a fusion of organic curvature and aerodynamic precision. This one-off coupe was unlike anything Chevrolet had previously imagined. The Testudo featured a smooth, seamless body with no visible door handles, a one-piece forward hinge glass canopy for access, and an uninterrupted beltline that gave it a futuristic silhouette. It looked more like a spacecraft or an exotic European dream car than something born from GM's conservative design culture. Even the headlights were concealed behind retractable flaps, further emphasizing the car's clean, uninterrupted lines. Underneath the body sat a rear-mounted, air-cooled, flat-6 engine borrowed from the Corvair Monza, but performance wasn't the focus. This was a design manifesto, a visual exploration of form, symmetry, and innovation. Inside, the cockpit was driver-centric, with minimalistic controls and futuristic flourishes, continuing the theme of clean design inside and out. While GM never had plans to mass-produce it, the Testudo became a benchmark in concept car history. Though it remained a one-off and was never seriously considered for production, the Chevrolet Testudo had a lasting influence on car design, inspiring later Bertone creations and even shaping certain GM styling elements. Rare, beautiful, and wildly ahead of its time, the Testudo was less a car and more a sculpture in motion, an unrealized vision of what Chevrolet could be in the hands of Italian artistry. Number 20. 2007 Chevrolet Groove. In 2007, Chevrolet unveiled a trio of small car concepts aimed at capturing the attention of urban drivers around the world. Among them stood the Chevrolet Groove, a compact, boxy hatchback with youthful charm and rugged personality. Built by GM's design team in South Korea, the Groove was aimed squarely at first-time buyers and city dwellers looking for a blend of utility, efficiency, and expressive design. Despite its diminutive size, the Groove made a big visual statement. Its chunky fenders, short overhangs, and upright windshield gave it a tough, almost mini SUV stance, while bold wheel arches and aggressive detailing hinted at an adventurous spirit. The front fascia featured oversized headlights and a wide grille, making the car look more assertive than playful. This wasn't another bland econobox. It had attitude. Under the hood, it packed a 1-liter turbo diesel engine, an unusual choice for an American-branded concept, but one that made perfect sense for its intended global audience. The diesel engine promised excellent fuel economy, and paired with a lightweight chassis, the Groove aimed to offer nimble handling in tight urban environments. Inside, the cabin was Spartan but functional, with clever storage solutions and youthful styling elements. It was clearly designed with budget-conscious yet style-savvy drivers in mind. Though it received positive attention at the New York Auto Show, the Groove never reached production. GM held a public vote to decide which of the 3 minicar concepts would go forward, and the Beat ultimately won. As a result, the Groove faded into obscurity, becoming one of those rare vehicles that exists only in press photos and auto show archives. Today, the Groove is remembered as a missed opportunity, a quirky, cool, and practical little Chevy that could have made a big splash in a world shifting towards smaller, more efficient vehicles. But like many great ideas, it never made it off the stage. Number 19. 1961 Chevrolet Mako Shark 1. In the early 1960s, Chevrolet unleashed a concept car that would do more than inspire dreams. It would shape the future of the Corvette itself. That car was the Chevrolet Mako Shark 1, a dramatic, streamlined showpiece that debuted in 1961 and signaled a bold new design language for America's sports car. Built under the guidance of GM design boss Bill Mitchell, the Mako Shark was directly inspired by Mitchell's deep-sea fishing expedition, during which he caught a short-finned Mako shark whose shape and coloration left a lasting impression. The Mako Shark featured a pointed nose, long hood, sharply creased fenders, and a fastback rear that sloped into a subtle tail fin, a silhouette that seemed to move even when standing still. The body wore a two-tone paint job with a gradient that faded from deep ocean blue at the top to silver at the bottom, mimicking the coloration of the shark that inspired it. Underneath, it used a modified Corvette chassis, but the body and interior were entirely bespoke. Inside, the cabin featured bucket seats, advanced instrumentation, and a racing-style steering wheel, all designed to reflect its high-performance persona. Though never intended for mass production, the Mako Shark made a significant impact on Chevrolet's design philosophy. Elements of its styling would directly influence the production 1963 Corvette Stingray, including the hidden headlamps, split rear window, and dramatic beltline. The concept proved that dream cars could evolve into real cars, and that fantasy had a place in factory design studios. The Mako Shark 1 remains one of the most iconic unreleased Chevrolets in history. Rare, theatrical, and transformative, it wasn't just a concept, it was a prophecy wearing a Corvette badge. Number 18. 1965 Chevrolet Mako Shark 2. If the Mako Shark 1 was the spark, then the Mako Shark 2 was the full-blown firestorm, a concept so aggressive and captivating that it would become the blueprint for the third-generation Corvette. Unveiled in 1965, this radical follow-up to the original Mako Shark concept took everything Bill Mitchell loved about speed, danger, and beauty and distilled it into one sleek, predatory machine. From its dramatic proportions to its muscular surfaces, the Mako Shark 2 was never intended to be subtle. The design was jaw-dropping. A sharply pointed nose with retractable headlights gave way to massive, flared fenders that enclosed turbine-style wheels. The greenhouse was low and narrow, surrounded by bulging haunches and a camback-style rear end. Its dual-side exhausts, deep scoops, and ultra-low stance made it look like a futuristic race car in street clothes. The paint was a dramatic two-tone blend, again mimicking the oceanic gradient of the shark that inspired its name. Inside, the cockpit was just as extreme. Wraparound bucket seats, a high center console, and jet aircraft-style controls pushed the car's persona well into science fiction territory. Though many of these features wouldn't make it to production, the concept served its purpose. It gave the public a visual shockwave and teased what was coming next. And it worked. The C3 Corvette, introduced in 1968, borrowed heavily from the Mako Shark II's exterior, translating its curves and attitude into a road-legal masterpiece. But the original show car, with its over-the-top flair and unfiltered ambition, was never sold or produced in quantity. The Mako Shark II remains a unicorn in Chevrolet's design history. Rare, untamed, and unforgettable, it was a concept so powerful, it shaped a generation. Number 17. 2002 Chevrolet Belair Concept. At the dawn of the new millennium, Chevrolet looked back to its golden years for inspiration and brought forth a modern homage to one of its most iconic nameplates, the Belair. But this wasn't a rehash of the past. The 2002 Chevrolet Belair Concept reimagined the classic American cruiser through the lens of contemporary engineering and retro modern design. It debuted at the North American International Auto Show, where it turned heads with its nostalgic silhouette and unexpected powertrain. Visually, the Belair concept echoed the mid-50s styling that made the original famous. It featured a long hood, chrome grille, sculpted rear fenders, and two-door hardtop styling reminiscent of the 1955-57 models. The proportions were exaggerated for dramatic effect, blending the cues of yesteryear with a modern, streamlined stance. Even the wide C-pillars and rounded rear glass were faithful nods to the past. But under the hood, the Belair concept told a different story. It was powered by a turbocharged 3.5-liter inline 5-cylinder engine, producing an estimated 315 horsepower. Paired with a hydromatic 4-speed automatic transmission, the engine was mounted longitudinally and sent power to the rear wheels. This choice, an odd 5-cylinder configuration, hinted at GM's experimentation with modular, torque-efficient power plants for future midsize vehicles. The interior matched the retro-futuristic tone, with a split-bench front seat, column shifter, and a dashboard that blended analog charm with digital precision. Brushed aluminum accents and two-tone upholstery completed the retro revival theme. Still, despite its charm and enthusiasm from the press, the Belair concept never progressed to production. It remained a show car, an affectionate tribute to the past, rather than a bridge to the future. Rare and reverent, the Belair concept was Chevrolet's love letter to its own legacy, an echo of fins, chrome, and cruising that was never meant to return to the streets. Number 16. 2005 Chevrolet Sequel. In 2005, at a time when the automotive industry was beginning to grapple with the reality of climate change and oil dependence, Chevrolet unveiled one of its most forward-thinking concept vehicles ever, the Chevrolet Sequel. Unlike flashy sports cars or nostalgic retro builds, the Sequel was a clean-sheet vision of a sustainable, hydrogen-powered future. It was a crossover SUV built not just to impress with looks, but to fundamentally rethink how vehicles could be powered, controlled, and built. The Sequel was the first vehicle to integrate a fuel cell propulsion system with drive-by-wire controls and advanced lithium-ion battery storage in a single platform. Under its aerodynamic body sat GM's fourth-generation hydrogen fuel cell stack, paired with electric motors at each wheel. This setup allowed for all-wheel drive performance with zero tailpipe emissions, just water vapor. The vehicle boasted a driving range of over 300 miles on a full tank of compressed hydrogen, an achievement few could match in that era. Beyond the powertrain, the sequel showcased futuristic styling and technology. It had a sleek exterior with a low drag coefficient, accentuated by a minimalist front grille and smooth body panels. Inside, it featured digital displays, space-age materials, and a cabin layout that felt like it belonged in a science fiction movie. It was also among the first GM vehicles to fully integrate steer-by-wire and brake-by-wire systems, replacing mechanical linkages with electronic signals. Despite its groundbreaking innovations and GM's heavy promotion of hydrogen as the fuel of the future, the sequel never made it to production. High infrastructure costs and slow adoption of hydrogen technology sidelined the program. Yet the sequel remains a landmark in Chevrolet's history, rare, ahead of its time, and a glimpse into a cleaner future that still hasn't fully arrived. Number 15. 2007 Chevrolet Trax Concept. In 2007, Chevrolet turned its attention to the rapidly emerging market of compact, urban-oriented crossovers and introduced the Trax Concept, a small but bold vehicle designed for the new generation of city dwellers. Developed by GM Daewoo in South Korea and unveiled at the New York Auto Show, the Trax was one of 3 mini-car concepts presented to gauge consumer interest. While the others leaned towards sleek or playful aesthetics, the Trax was the rugged adventure of the trio. It featured a tall stance, muscular fenders, and SUV-inspired body cladding that gave it a tougher look despite its subcompact proportions. The front end sported a wide grille and large circular fog lamps that emphasized its off-road intentions, even if its real-world capabilities remained conceptual. The short wheelbase and minimal overhangs allowed for agile urban maneuvering, while the high seating position gave it the appeal of a downsized SUV. Power came from a modest 1-liter 3-cylinder engine focused on efficiency rather than performance. Inside, the Trax was tailored for young, tech-savvy drivers. The cabin featured bold color accents, a simple layout, and flexible storage spaces to handle everyday city life. The concept emphasized fun and practicality, with a design meant to appeal to budget-conscious buyers looking for individuality in a compact footprint. Despite receiving praise, the Trax was not selected for production at the time. Chevrolet held a public vote, and the Beat concept won the popularity contest. But years later, the Trax name would be resurrected for a production model that bore only a faint resemblance to this original concept. Rare and largely forgotten, the 2007 Trax concept was a stylistic rebel, a small Chevy with big personality that previewed a market shift well before it arrived. Number 14. 2000 Chevrolet SSR Concept. At the turn of the millennium, Chevrolet stunned audiences with a concept vehicle that refused to fit neatly into any automotive category, the SSR, short for Super Sport Roadster. Unveiled at the 2000 Detroit Auto Show, the SSR concept was a radical mashup of vintage pickup truck styling, convertible freedom, and modern performance. It was part retro tribute, part design experiment, and part brand statement, designed to evoke emotion before logic. The SSR's exterior was inspired by the curvaceous Chevy trucks of the late 1940s and early 1950s, particularly the Advanced Design series. Its rounded fenders, bold grille, and flowing hood lines paid homage to that post-war era, but with a wider, more aggressive stance. Where it truly broke the mold was with its retractable hardtop, a power-folding roof that stowed neatly into the cargo bed, transforming the truck into a convertible in seconds. No production truck had ever attempted anything quite like it. The concept's interior was equally unconventional. It combined old-school aesthetics, like body-color dashboard panels and brushed metal trim, with modern amenities and sporty bucket seats. Beneath the skin, the SSR Concept featured rear-wheel drive and a V8 engine, hinting that this wasn't just a styling exercise, it was a performance cruiser. But its unique character left GM unsure how to position it within their lineup. Though the SSR did eventually make it into production in 2003, the final version was heavily re-engineered and lost some of the concept's originality and flair. The 2000 SSR Concept, however, remains a rare and raw expression of Chevrolet's creative peak. It dared to be different, blending nostalgia, innovation, and fun into something that looked like it came from an alternate timeline. Number 13. 1965 Chevrolet Turbo Titan III. In an era captivated by space travel and jet propulsion, Chevrolet brought that same futuristic energy to the highway with the awe-inspiring Turbo Titan III. Unveiled in 1965 as part of GM's broader Futurama vision, the Turbo Titan III wasn't just a truck, it was a moving statement about the future of long-haul transportation. This radical concept featured turbine power, aerospace styling, and technological ambition far beyond anything else on the road. The heart of the Turbo Titan III was its gas turbine engine, a modified GT309 unit developed by GM's Allison division. Producing around 280 horsepower and capable of running on diesel, kerosene, or even jet fuel, the turbine was smoother and lighter than traditional diesel engines of the time. It delivered its power through a specially developed transmission designed to handle the high revving characteristics of a turbine. This setup promised improved efficiency and reliability for long-distance trucking, at least in theory. The design matched the innovation under the hood. The cab-over layout featured a dramatically raked windshield, expansive glass canopy, and angular side windows that gave it a jet cockpit feel. Behind it was a gleaming, stainless steel trailer designed by Fruhoff, creating a rolling showcase of futuristic logistics. Inside the cab, twin captain's chairs, aviation-inspired controls, and wraparound gauges made it feel more like a spacecraft than a commercial hauler. Despite its spectacle, the Turbo Titan III never made it past the prototype phase. Turbine engines proved too thirsty and expensive for real-world adoption, and the oil crises of the 1970s sealed their fate. Still, the Turbo Titan III stands as one of the rarest and most visually striking vehicles Chevrolet ever created. A space-age dream on 18 wheels, it was the future of trucking that never arrived. Number 12. 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Monza GT. The early 1960s were a period of wild innovation at General Motors, and perhaps no vehicle embodied that more boldly than the Chevrolet Corvair Monza GT. Unveiled in 1962, this breathtaking concept was based loosely on the compact Corvair, but executed with the styling and mystique of a European exotic. The Monza GT wasn't just a show car, it was a true experiment in engineering and design that almost redefined what a Chevrolet could be. Using a modified Corvair chassis that was shortened by 16 inches, the Monza GT moved the flat-six engine from the rear to a mid-engine configuration, completely transforming the car's weight distribution and handling dynamics. The body, made from lightweight fiberglass, featured a flowing, low-slung profile with a front-hinged canopy that lifted up the windshield and roof in one dramatic motion. Its design was decades ahead of its time, featuring flush-mounted glass, hidden headlights, and a near-seamless silhouette. It looked more like a prototype for Le Mans than a descendant of the economy-minded Corvair. The interior echoed the same futuristic ambitions. Two low bucket seats sat within a minimalist cockpit, surrounded by a wraparound dash with aircraft-style switchgear and performance gauges. Everything about the Monza GT was focused on the driver, speed, control, and vision. It was a rolling vision of what an American mid-engine sports car could become. Though public response was overwhelmingly positive, the Monza GT was never approved for production. Safety regulations, production costs, and the uncertain future of the Corvair line all played a role in its quiet demise. But its influence remained. Its styling cues and mid-engine layout would inspire generations of dreamers and designers alike. Rare and revolutionary, the Monza GT is a reminder of a moment when Chevrolet nearly redefined the American sports car from the inside out. Number 11. 1961 Chevrolet Corvair Sebring Spider. In 1961, as Chevrolet continued to explore the sporty potential of its unconventional Corvair platform, it created one of the most elegant and spirited roadster concepts it would ever build, the Corvair Sebring Spider. Named after the famous Florida racetrack, the Sebring Spider was envisioned as a sleek, two-seat performance machine that could elevate the Corvair name from quirky compact to serious sports contender. It was designed not only to turn heads, but to make enthusiasts rethink what the Corvair could truly be. Built on a special chassis shortened by nearly 15 inches from the production model, the Sebring Spider featured a lightweight, roadster-style body with flowing fenders, minimal overhangs, and a dramatically low windshield. The front end was clean and aerodynamic, with hidden headlights and a wide, aggressive stance. The rear was short and muscular, emphasizing its sporting intentions. The entire car seemed sculpted with speed in mind. Under the rear deck sat a supercharged version of the Corvair's air-cooled flat-six engine, giving it a performance edge over the standard production models. Paired with a manual transmission and rear-wheel drive, the setup promised lively handling and spirited acceleration. The interior was stripped down and race-focused, featuring dual bucket seats, a minimalist dash, and competition-inspired gauges. This was Chevrolet's flirtation with turning the Corvair into a true roadster, capable of competing with the likes of Porsche and Alfa Romeo. Unfortunately, the Sebring Spider was never more than a concept. It debuted at the 1961 Chicago Auto Show, but never progressed to a production program. Concerns over market demand, safety regulations, and the growing controversy around the Corvair itself kept it from moving forward. Still, it remains one of the rarest and most beautiful expressions of what the Corvair could have been, a lithe, open-top sports car that might have rewritten Chevrolet's performance history. Number 10. 1962 Chevrolet Corvair Super Spider. In 1962, Chevrolet took its Corvair experimentation one step further with a machine that pushed design, performance, and minimalism to daring new heights, the Corvair Super Spider. Building on the concept momentum of the Sebring Spider from the year before, the Super Spider was even more radical, even more compact, and even more performance-oriented. Officially designated XP 785, it represented the purest expression of a track-focused Corvair that never got to prove itself on the open road. Visually, the Super Spider was almost alien compared to other GM offerings of the time. It featured an ultra-low profile, cut-down windscreen, fared-in headrests, and a rear deck that flowed seamlessly into the engine bay. The body had been shortened again from the Sebring Spider's already tight dimensions, making the car feel almost like a purpose-built race machine. Its rear haunches were muscular and athletic, suggesting the power that lay just beneath the surface. That power came from a turbocharged version of the Corvair's flat-six engine, a cutting-edge technology at the time. Chevrolet had recently introduced turbocharging into its production lineup, and the Super Spider took that innovation and pushed it to its conceptual limit. Combined with the car's feather-light body and optimized chassis, it hinted at blistering performance few people ever got to witness. Inside, the cockpit was as stripped down as they come. No frills, just racing essentials. Dual gauges, bucket seats, and a short-throw shifter. Despite its groundbreaking form, the Super Spider was never seriously considered for production. Like its siblings, it fell victim to shifting priorities, regulatory uncertainty, and the eventual decline of the Corvair nameplate. but design experts and historians still regard it as one of GM's finest concept creations of the early 60s. Rare, raw, and revolutionary, the Corvair Superspider remains a ghost of the sports car Chevrolet almost dared to build. Number 9. 1960 Chevrolet Corvair Coupe Speciale. In 1960, Chevrolet's Corvair caught the eye of Italian coach builder Pininfarina, resulting in one of the most elegant and internationally inspired Chevrolet concepts ever crafted, the Corvair Coupe Speciale. This one-off show car was a rare collaboration between American engineering and Italian artistry, blending the mechanical ingenuity of the Corvair with the sophisticated design language of Europe's most revered styling house. Built on a stock Corvair chassis and powered by the standard air-cooled flat-six engine, the Coupe Speciale was never about brute performance. It was about reimagining Chevrolet's compact car through a completely different cultural lens. The body was a hand-formed fastback, low and graceful, with sweeping lines and a purity of shape that stood in stark contrast to the often overstyled American vehicles of the time. The signature Pininfarina touches included delicately sculpted fender arches, razor-thin chrome trim, and an elegant grille flanked by twin headlamps enclosed in subtle nacelles. Unveiled at the 1961 Paris Auto Show and later displayed at the 1963 Geneva Motor Show, the Coupe Speciale drew attention for its tasteful restraint. Inside, the car featured refined upholstery, a clean instrument panel, and upscale materials, reinforcing its grand touring aspirations. Though it shared much of its mechanical DNA with the production Corvair, the bodywork and overall presentation made it feel like a different species altogether. Chevrolet never planned to mass-produce the Coupe Speciale, and it quietly faded into obscurity after its brief European tour. Still, it remains one of the rarest and most artistically significant Corvair-based vehicles ever made. A symbol of cross-Atlantic creativity, the Corvair Coupe Speciale is a reminder that even humble platforms can become breathtaking when placed in the hands of visionary designers. Number 8. 1973 Chevrolet Corvette 4-rotor. In the early 1970s, as the automotive world flirted with rotary engine technology, Chevrolet made one of its boldest moves yet with the creation of the Corvette 4-rotor. This concept was unlike any Corvette before it. Mid-engined, wedge-shaped, and powered by a radical twin-rotor Wankel setup joined together to form a 4-rotor monster. It was developed during a brief but intense period when GM seriously explored rotary engines as a cleaner, lighter, and more efficient alternative to traditional piston power. Built on an experimental mid-engine platform, the Corvette 4-rotor looked more like a spaceship than a road car. The body was low and wide, styled with razor-sharp lines, hidden headlamps, and a long, flat nose that seemed to slice the air in half. The gull-wing doors gave it an exotic presence rarely seen from American automakers, and its proportions were more Ferrari than fiberglass. At the rear sat a massive glass engine cover that showcased the heart of the concept. Two twin-rotor Wankel engines mated together to form a 420 horsepower 4-rotor powerhouse. Inside, the cabin was just as futuristic. Digital instrumentation, high-back bucket seats, and aircraft-inspired switchgear gave the car a cockpit-like ambiance. The 4-rotor wasn't just about looks. It was a high-performance testbed that GM genuinely considered for limited production. But emissions challenges, poor fuel economy, and rising development costs quickly soured GM's enthusiasm for the rotary engine program. The project was ultimately scrapped, and the Corvette 4-rotor was re-engineered with a conventional V to become the Arovet. But the original 4-rotor version remains one of the rarest and most imaginative concept cars in Chevrolet's history. A tantalizing what-if. It was a Corvette designed for a future that never arrived. Number 7. 1970 Chevrolet Sirocco Show Car. In 1970, Chevrolet unleashed one of its most visually aggressive and mysterious concepts, the Scirocco show car, a heavily modified Corvette-based prototype that embodied the excess and ambition of GM's design department during the Bill Mitchell era. Not to be confused with Volkswagen's later coupe of the same name, Chevrolet's Scirocco was an evolution of the XP 882 Arovet lineage, but with a unique flair that made it unforgettable. Though it was never intended for production, it remains one of the most elusive and rare concept vehicles GM ever created. Based on a stretched 1969 Corvette chassis, the Scirocco was outfitted with radically flared fenders, deep side scoops, and a long, pointed nose that made it look more like a Can-Am race car than a street machine. Its proportions were menacing and theatrical, and it featured a removable Targa-style roof panel paired with a steeply raked rear glass. Power came from a ZL1 all-aluminum 427 cubic inch big block V8, making it not just a styling exercise but a genuine performance brute. The engine sat just ahead of the rear axle, making this one of Chevrolet's early stabs at a rear mid-engine sports car layout. Inside, the cabin was tailored for high-speed driving, with deeply bolstered seats, race-inspired gauges, and a flat-bottom steering wheel. The entire car was built as a personal vehicle for GM design chief Bill Mitchell, who drove it frequently and even used it as a pace car during Can-Am events. Yet despite its capability and bold looks, the Scirocco was never greenlit for broader development. It remained a singular design study, a stylistic beast that roared in private but never in showrooms. Rare, brutal, and dripping with personality, the Scirocco show car was the Corvette's dark alter ego, a supercar prototype that flaunted what Chevrolet could do when limits were off the table. Number 6. 1974 Chevrolet Corvette Mulsanne. By the mid-1970s, GM's design studios were still riding the wave of boundary-pushing Corvette concepts, and among the most exotic of them all was the Chevrolet Corvette Mulsanne. Evolved from the earlier Scirocco show car, the Mulsanne represented the final, most refined version of Bill Mitchell's vision for a Corvette supercar that fused American muscle with European sophistication. Named after the iconic straightaway at Le Mans, the Mulsanne was built for speed, drama, and statement. The body retained the muscular, stretched Corvette chassis but received an updated exterior with sharper lines, 1975-style urethane bumpers, and a bright silver metallic finish. It looked less like a prototype and more like a showroom-ready exotic, yet it never left the studio's floor. The hood was long and flat, with an aggressive nose and wide rear haunches that hinted at the beast within. Under the hood, the Mulsanne packed a 454 cubic inch V, bored out to an astonishing 482 cubic inches, featuring experimental electronic fuel injection, a rare and cutting-edge addition for its time. Inside, the Mulsanne was dressed in hand-stitched leather and high-grade materials that leaned toward the grand touring end of the performance spectrum. It wasn't just a show car, it was a personal vehicle for Bill Mitchell himself, used often and maintained like a crown jewel of GM's design fleet. Unlike earlier wild concepts, the Mulsanne was subtly elegant, a show of maturity without losing its sharp edge. Yet, despite its poise and potential, the Mulsanne was never offered to the public. It remained a one-off, tucked away after Mitchell's retirement, a quiet exclamation point on an era of flamboyant, fearless design. Rare, refined, and deeply personal, the Corvette Mulsanne stands as a tribute to the man who reimagined what American sports cars could be. Number 5. 1992 Chevrolet Monte Carlo Concept. In the early 1990s, Chevrolet sought to revive the prestige and style once associated with the Monte Carlo nameplate, and the result was the dramatic 1992 Concept Monte Carlo. Unveiled at major auto shows in Detroit and Los Angeles, this sleek coupe was a bold departure from the squared-off Monte Carlos of the past. It was designed not as a muscle car throwback, but as a futuristic grand tourer aimed at the high-tech, design-forward direction of the coming decade. The body was long, low, and fluid, sculpted in a wind tunnel for maximum aerodynamic efficiency. Its most striking feature was the full bubble-style glass roof that curved seamlessly from windshield to rear window, giving it a panoramic greenhouse that bathed the cabin in natural light. The front fascia featured integrated fog lamps, hidden headlamps, and a narrow grille that gave it an almost concept Lexus appearance before that look became mainstream. Riding on a front-wheel drive Lumina platform, it was meant to blend practicality with performance-focused styling. Inside, the concept featured a futuristic interior with a digital dashboard, sculpted bucket seats, and wraparound door panel. The center console flowed from front to rear, creating a cockpit feel for all four passengers. Everything was driver-focused, with technology like push-button controls, electronic climate management, and an early infotainment interface. It was Chevrolet's attempt to reframe American coupes as luxurious, high-tech machines. Despite interest, the 1992 concept Monte Carlo never advanced to production. GM opted instead for a more conservative approach in future iterations, leaving this radical design as a one-off dream. Rare and largely forgotten, it remains a fascinating glimpse at what the Monte Carlo might have become in an alternate timeline, where American performance was reborn in glass and grace. Number 4. 2002 Chevrolet Journey Concept. In 2002, Chevrolet set its sights on the growing demand for versatile crossovers in emerging global markets, and from that vision came the Chevrolet Journey concept, a vehicle designed not for American highways, but for the untamed roads and vibrant lifestyles of South America. Developed primarily by GM do Brasil, the Journey was more than a concept. It was a cultural experiment in how to build an SUV that matched regional needs without sacrificing innovation. Visually, the Journey concept combined the ruggedness of a sport utility vehicle with the flowing lines of a modern wagon. Its compact proportions were tailored for urban driving, but high ground clearance, short overhangs, and pronounced wheel arches gave it off-road credibility. The wide stance and angular front grille conveyed confidence, while roof rails and flared fenders hinted at its adventurous side. This was not a soft crossover. It was intended to feel durable, adaptable, and ready for action. Inside, the cabin was designed with practicality in mind, offering flexible three-row seating in a compact footprint. Clever storage solutions, fold-flat seats, and washable surfaces made it family and cargo-friendly, while a minimalist dashboard and digital display system gave it a modern edge. The concept also showcased features like all-wheel drive and an economical powertrain, key ingredients for tackling both crowded cities and rural terrain. Its focus was on mobility for the active, adventurous, and budget-conscious consumer. Despite positive reception at auto shows in Latin America, the Chevrolet Journey never reached production. GM ultimately redirected its efforts toward more globalized platforms, and the Journey became yet another promising idea lost to time. Rare, regionally tailored, and full of practical charm, the Journey concept remains a unique chapter in Chevrolet's international design story, one that almost made it to the road. Number 3. 2007 Chevrolet G-Pix. In 2007, Chevrolet once again turned to Brazil for design inspiration and introduced the G-Pix concept at the Sao Paulo Auto Show, a futuristic, compact crossover coupe that aimed to capture the heart of the rapidly urbanizing South American market. Designed by GM South America Design Center, the G-Pix was intended to bridge the gap between a sporty hatchback and a rugged SUV, all wrapped in a bold and youthful shell. It was a showcase of what Chevrolet believed the modern South American driver wanted: agility, flair, and functionality in one package. The G-Pix's exterior was striking. It featured a high riding stance with oversized wheels, flared fenders, and protective lower cladding, elements that hinted at light off-road capability. The coupe-like roofline swept down into a compact rear hatch, creating a silhouette more reminiscent of a sports car than a crossover. The front end bore Chevrolet's global design language with a split grille, but added narrow LED headlamps and an angular fascia that gave it a sharp, modern face. Inside, the cabin was a blend of sporty and practical. 4 sculpted bucket seats were separated by a full-length console, and the dashboard housed a digital instrument panel alongside an early iteration of Chevrolet's infotainment interface. Transparent roof panels added light to the minimalist interior, giving the compact space a roomy and tech-forward feel. It wasn't just a concept, it was a design language testbed for GM's future compact vehicles. Despite its promise, the G-Pix never made it into production. Instead, it influenced future models like the Chevrolet, Onyx, and Agile, but its bold two-door crossover body never translated into a showroom offering. Rare and distinctly regional, the G-Pix was Chevrolet's sporty love letter to the urban adventurer, built for show but never for sale. Number 2. 1969 Chevrolet Astro 3. By 1969, Chevrolet had firmly embraced the jet age with its wildest interpretation of personal transportation yet, the Astro 3. Unlike the sports car-inspired Astro 1 or the sleek Astro 2, the Astro 3 looked like it belonged on a runway rather than a highway. Designed as a futuristic 2-passenger experimental vehicle, the Astro 3 took GM's obsession with aerospace styling to its logical extreme. With its needle-nose design and aircraft cockpit, it was less a car and more a vision of a sci-fi future that never arrived. The Astro 3 featured a tricycle-style layout with 2 front wheels set far apart and a single rear wheel, a setup chosen to minimize rolling resistance and improve aerodynamic flow. The entire vehicle stood less than 3 feet tall, giving it an incredibly low profile that made it appear to hover just above the pavement. Instead of doors, the cockpit canopy swung forward to allow access to the tandem seating interior, where the driver and passenger sat one behind the other, like in a jet fighter. There were no mirrors. Instead, a rear-facing camera fed visual data to a screen inside. Power came from a gas turbine engine mounted behind the cockpit, borrowed from GM's experimental turbine programs and capable of running on multiple fuel types. Though the performance figures were never publicized, the emphasis was clearly on testing alternative propulsion systems and radical packaging ideas. The Astro 3 never turned a wheel outside of controlled environments, nor was it ever intended for public sale. Still, it captured the optimism and unrestrained creativity of GM's design ethos during the 1960s. Rare, surreal, and utterly impractical, the Astro 3 was a space-age fantasy on 3 wheels, a rolling experiment in what personal mobility might look like in the next century. Number 1. 1973 Chevrolet Corvette XP 897 GT, 2-rotor. In 1973, Chevrolet unveiled one of the strangest and most fascinating Corvettes ever conceived, the XP 897 GT, a mid-engine sports car powered not by a V but by a rotary engine. As part of GM's ambitious Wankel rotary engine program, the XP 897 GT was a serious engineering study into alternative powertrains. Wrapped in a sleek body styled by Pininfarina and mounted on a Porsche 914 chassis. It was a Corvette in badge and spirit, but under the skin, it was something far more experimental. The car featured a GM-designed 2-rotor Wankel engine mounted behind the driver, producing around 180 horsepower. It was compact, lightweight, and smooth running, giving the XP 897 GT a low center of gravity and balanced handling. The fiberglass body was sharp and futuristic, with a wide, aggressive front end, pop-up headlights, and a steeply raked rear glass canopy that exposed the rotary engine like a piece of modern art. Gullwing-style doors added to its exotic flair, while the cabin was minimal yet focused on driver engagement. Though the car was built in Italy by Pininfarina, it was fully functional and drivable. GM displayed it at several international auto shows to signal its serious investment in rotary technology. However, looming fuel economy standards, emissions challenges, and high development costs led to the cancellation of GM's rotary engine program by the mid-1970s. The XP 897 GT, like the entire Wankel initiative, was quietly shelved. Today, the lone XP 897 GT prototype survives in GM's Heritage Center, a rare relic of what might have been. Rare, rotary-powered, and designed across continents, it stands as one of the most unique Corvettes ever created, a final, brilliant whisper from an era when Chevrolet dared to rewrite its own playbook.